To a small video tutorial on how to actually get the Apache server up and running and how to make sure it's actually going. Okay, so I'm going to show a couple of small troubleshooting things as well as the installation. Very simple things. Unfortunately, troubleshooting can be a little bit of a difficult thing because, well, we have no idea what types of things we could have wrong, but I'll give you some of the ideas about the first things to check for. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be working on a Mac. I'm going to be using the SSH command to connect. Once connected, of course, it will look exactly the same if you're using PuTTY or if you're using the Windows command SSH as well. All right, so the first thing up is I'm going to connect into my server. So I already know the IP address, so this is the address we're going to be using many times. All right, and here's my password. All right, so you can see now I've got myself logged in. One of the things you're going to see me do quite often, you're going to see me clear the screen many times just so I can talk about what's here and I can point at things with the cursor. All right, so first thing up, all of the operations are privileged, which means that I need to be the super user, so I'm going to start up an interactive shell. All right, and of course you can now tell you that you're the super user because we've got this hashtag. All right, so our first thing up is to actually get a copy of Apache installed. Okay, so here's the first thing we're going to be doing is the name of the package is called Apache 2. Now, I will very quickly demonstrate how to do this because I don't want to just be some kind of a magic thing. All right, so remember that the Advanced Package Management System is the command that we're going to be using here is apt, and you can take a look on the website and see my comments about apt.get because you're going to see lots of this. But one of the things I'm going to search for is the word simply Apache because I know it's a web server. All right, and what this will do is this will go off and it'll provide me a list with everything that has the word Apache or has some kind of a linkage to it. For example, you can see that this is Apache Zookeeper. I'm not even sure what this is. Sorry, top for Apache Zookeeper. But this Yasat simple stupid auto tool, I'm not sure how this applies to Apache, but maybe it depends on it. In any case, one of the very first things that pops up way at the very beginning, okay, so way back, here it is. Somewhere up towards the top, you can actually find it right here. This is the Apache HTTP server, and the name is called Apache 2. Okay, alternatively, you can always open up Google and say, what package do I need to install for Apache HTTP server? And somebody will say, type this command, and it's over with. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Here, I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm simply going to go apt install Apache 2. Okay, and that's actually all that we need to do. All right, so the unfortunate thing is that you will actually require several things, but the good news is apt will look after installing all of the dependencies. So it is going to install all of the things that are listed here, including libua52-0, SSL certs, Apache data, Apache utils. All of these things are going to get installed, and it's going to also make some suggestions about some other packages. Well, we really don't care about these things right now. Okay, so yes, this is actually enough to get us going. So you say yes, you let it go off, it will download all of the necessary files from the repository, and it'll go through an installation. Okay, luckily these will not take very long, and it will do a basic configuration. I'm going to show you the way how Apache is configured on an Ubuntu server. So installing this on a different Linux server, you're probably going to see some very different things. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to install it, we're going to test it, and we're just going to make sure everything is all right. Okay, so sometimes I get hung up for a little bit. Okay. Okay, almost done. Okay, and finished. All right, so now that's great. We've got this up and going, or at least we've got it installed. Does it actually work? Okay, well, the easiest way to find out whether or not it works is to actually run a web browser. Now, you can use whichever web browser you want to mess around with. I'm looking now at a couple of browsers here, trying to decide which one to pick. Unfortunately, I think if I pick Chrome right now, this may bring me back to another window. All right, so that's fine. Let me just grab this and let me see if I can take that window and we'll throw it over here onto this other desktop. Sorry, I should have had one of these open before. Okay, here we go. All right, so in order to test this to see whether it works, all that I need to do is to open up Google Chrome or Safari or Firefox or Internet Explorer, well, maybe not on Mac, and all that I need to do is in my browser window, I just need to put the IP address of the machine we want to connect to. So we know it's 192.168.16.12, and this is the Apache to Ubuntu default page. Okay, so this is the very first thing, this is what you hope you see, is the phrase "it works." That means that you have gotten everything installed and it's working. All right, so now let's go back over to here so I can show you some of the things that you can also use to check and see whether or not it's working. Okay, there's a handful of ways that I use to find out whether or not something is working. The first thing that I'd be really interested in knowing is whether or not the process itself is running. Okay, so the process is called Apache 2. So, PS, if you've gone off and you've done some Linux stuff, you know that this is the process status. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for all of the process, including users, including the ones that are not attached to anything. And I'm simply going to grep for the word Apache 2. Okay. All right, and you can see here, there's at least a couple of things going. I've got a version here, user has been Apache 2, Apache 2. So there's actually 3 of them running right now. One is running as root, the other 2 are running as www-data. This was actually the main startup, and these are the actual handling threads. So right now there are 3 threads. Of course, this can be configured so you can have multiple threads in case you got a big server, but more on that a little bit later, performance tuning. All right, and of course you can also see the actual grep command because I was actually grepping for the word Apache, so this also appeared. So this is a good sign. This means that everything is up and running. Now, this one is not very convenient of an output, and it's not the way how you deal with starting or stopping things. So if you're an old-time Linux user, I'm talking from stuff from the 1970s, 1980s, you would know that if you wanted to restart this, you'd probably find the process ID and send a kill -1 or -HUP to do updates and so on. That is not the way how we normally control things in Ubuntu. You can certainly do it, but the usual way is to now use a command called Systemctl. Okay, and while I'm here, I'm going to show you another one, but it's not something that we use anymore, but just in case you bump into it. All right, so the command is called Systemctl. All right, and this will give me a big long list if you just type this. This is way too much stuff. All right, but what I'm interested in is the status of the service called Apache 2. All right, so this turns out to be really quite simple. Okay, so Systemctl status Apache 2, and what it'll say is that it is currently active and running. So that's actually a good sign. So we actually use a Systemctl for both starting up and stopping various services. For example, if you wanted to, you could say stop Apache 2. Okay, and now that will be unloaded. And if you now run your status command, you'll see that it's inactive, dead, so it's actually not running. And if you want, you can say Systemctl start Apache 2, and if we run a status again, you'll see it's back to running. Okay, so that's the way how we go about starting and stopping services. So usually if I can't reach a website because maybe it's not up and running, there's a couple of things that I can do. Sorry, I was looking for the one called stop. Okay, so let me stop it. So of course we know it's not currently running. If you want, you could type ps aux and grep for Apache 2, and you'll see that there's no longer any servicing threads. And more importantly, if you go off and you try reloading the site, it'll just say, sorry, the site cannot be reached. It refused to connect. That's because the service isn't running. Okay, so that's one of the things that I use for doing some, so start. Okay, that's one of the things that we end up using for doing some debugging. Okay, as an alternative to simply looking at the actual process to determine whether or not Apache's up and going, a very useful tool that's built into Ubuntu now is a command called ss. Okay, sorry, not three S's, just two S's. Okay, and what it is, it says it's yet another utility to investigate sockets. Okay, so fine, it's to dump socket statistics. I don't use it for actually getting socket statistics, but I do use it for actually finding out which command or which ports are currently being listened to. I find this very, very useful. Okay, so SS on its own is a little too much. It provides all of the different types of sockets, so Unix sockets, UDP sockets, and TCP sockets. And we know that HTTP traffic falls under TCP IP connections, so you can use a -T and you will see only established TCP connections. And you can see right now there's only one of them, which happens to be the SSH. Okay, and of course, well, remember, I am connected, so if I disconnect from here and ran it, from the console, then you wouldn't actually see any connections at all. But an option to make it a little bit more useful is to include the A flag, and what this will do is this will show you all of the connections, both the established ones as well as the listenings, and this is good because what it says right here in this line is that the local port on all addresses listening on the HTTP port is here. So this is actually as a result of the Apache server running. But most of the time I also include this extra flag in here called N, and what it does is it stops trying to turn things into names like SSH. It actually uses port number 22. And I find this sometimes just a little bit easier to spot. Okay, so if we know that HTTP is supposed to be running on port 80, well, this of course is exactly the line that we're looking for. And if we wanted to, we could say systemctl stop Apache 2. Okay, and that will bring it down. And now if you run this, you'll see that there's no process currently listening on port 80. Okay, so if something is simply not working, you can always check this. This is particularly useful when you start configuring Apache to run on different ports and serve up different types of things. So if your server simply isn't running, you can always check this and see whether or not it's actually listening on a particular port. Okay, now that's one thing. Second thing, while I'm here, in terms of debugging, if you do some searching on the internet, you may find some people asking you to type service Apache 2 status to find out the actual status. And you'll notice that systemctl status Apache 2 actually gives you exactly the same thing. Okay, so yes, if you do find somebody suggesting you type service Apache 2 start, stop, or restart, or reload, as we'll talk about a little bit later, or system control status Apache 2, they both do the same thing. But what you're going to find is that I will be using the system control version most of the time. Okay, all right, so that is it for sort of getting things up and going. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to go through and we're going to start to make some changes to that actual website that we saw a few seconds ago, this one right here, and I'm going to explain the configuration overview because they've done some very nice things here with this particular package, the way how they've organized it. If you follow it, it is very easy, and if you try to avoid it, it kind of gets a real big mess out of this. But in any case, we'll be back on that another time. So that's it for today's lesson.